Hello, everyone. I haven't made a non-podcast video in a while, and I just got really inspired today to talk about the benefits of looking at multiple traditions, kind of involving yourself in a large variety of spiritual approaches for the sake of the spiritual path. And it really comes down to, well, I'll go over the pros and cons first of all, because there's definitely cons. But the pro that I wanted to highlight is that you get to uncover, shine some light on superstitions. So, what got inspired for this video was I was listening to a teacher talk about how you need to avoid the number four, try to do things in fives if you can. And that was in direct contrast to, um, I just did the Wheel of the Year in the Southwestern, American Indian tradition, the Apache and all those tribes over there, where four is a sacred number to them. The four seasons, the four directions. Four is just, it's not just a good number, where if you just look at regular Western psychology, we have squares. We built a lot of things with that kind of foundation. Fours like that is a very solid ground of health, stability. In numerology, it has these same meanings. And then, yeah, and first American Indians, they had a lot of reverence for the number four, whereas the Asian traditions, East Asian traditions, because there's that pun on the word four, where it can also mean the character for death, and there's this just got associated with that. And so then this superstition, because when fear, you could do a whole video on fear, but fear is this force in our lives that will show up in ways that are often unconscious, because fear is such a hard emotion to be with, to sit with, to have consciously arise. You could say so much of what we do is to combat feeling fear. Like, I'm sitting within four walls now, protected and safe, so I don't have to feel the fear of exposure, of survival. But I don't actively feel that fear and then choose to do these behaviors. We're normally just trying to get out ahead of it. Anyway, full circle. So fear can show up in spiritual traditions as truth, right? Like, avoid the number four. That's a bad number for X, Y, and Z. And that's why I like to look at other traditions. I'm like, well, if that was the capital T truth, I'd start reorganizing my life around fours, and that's how you end up in New York City. Nothing's on the 13th floor. There's no 13th floor. There's no numbered 13th floor. Obviously, there's a 13th floor because it comes after 12. But my point is, the fear, and it exacerbates and it starts dominating all these sorts of things, and it's not just irrational, it's the superstition, because there's a lot of stuff you do in spiritual arts that are irrational, but it has some validity and some basis in it. So that's one of the pros at looking at different traditions. Now, the cons you need to look for are trying to mix and mash things that aren't supposed to go together, right? So I like to delve lightly into different traditions, or only focus and do one within itself at a time. So I don't do, the sun greeting from the Apache tradition, and then I use that sun energy just to do some qigong, right? That's starting to mix things. That's not the best example, because if you look historically, a lot of the tradition, the people migrated across, that bridge from Russia to Alaska that used to exist, and came down to make the first American Indians. So a lot of the ancient roots of Taoism are the same as that culture. A better example might be like pranayama, like you do some tumo breathing, some fire breathing, and that charges you up, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to use all this charged up energy for my internal alchemy practice, my Neigong, or some Western practice of something or the other. That's when you might get, your energetic system will be confused, right? It's like running two softwares at the same time. It's like running two browsers at the same time. You got one that's doing one thing, the other one has its other advantages. You want to use them together, um, but you can only look at one browser at a time. And it's good to know what the other browser does and to have that perspective, like I said, to illuminate superstitions or just have a broader perspective. But find that browser, find that path that's really calling to you at that time and really give it your all and your focus. That's all for this video. And well, I do want to say in closing, because I know a lot of us like to be personalities, we want to express ourselves, it's our truth. What I'm learning about today is that spiritual path is not so much a place to express your personality's truth. It's more really give yourself to a tradition or to a path or to even just a method. Like if you just did fire breathing, one method, just really give it your all. Don't try to put your spin on it, right? Take your personality out of the equation and see what giving yourself to that method fully has to offer you. And then later on, you can integrate and really have a deeper perspective for it. But don't try to play with things before you've given yourself over to it without your personality getting in the way. So that's the last caveat I'll have. Otherwise, enjoy your meanderings.